My mistake. I forgot your guys' volume was really low after I'd turned that down yesterday. That's my mistake.
Let's
Fix
bring
it.
into the conversation right
There you
now
go.
Dr. Sal Mercogliano with Campbell University, who's been guiding us through this story throughout the course of the week, and he joins me now. Thanks so much for being with us yet again. I know we talked to you earlier this afternoon. We wanted to get you, though, here in prime time because, and Sal, there's this story that's breaking right now in the Wall Street Journal. I want to put up the headline here, and this is what they are reporting. A top-secret U.S. Navy detection system designed to spot enemy submarines first heard the Titan submersible implosion days ago. So, from your expertise and experience, were they involved at all with the search effort? And if not, why not?
Well, this is the SOSUS array, and this was used to detect Soviet during the Cold War days submarines coming in. It's an array of listening devices on the ocean floor, and what makes the SOSUS array really unique is that it can hear at those really deep levels, and more importantly, because there's multiple arrays, it can actually triangulate in. So they should have been able to determine a approximate position of where that explosion took place. It really depends on where the arrays are located. And this area here is a tough one to get into because you're coming up against the continental shelf. But again, they would not exactly know what that explosion was. What they would have detected is a noise. And again, not exactly clear if it's an implosion noise or just a noise in general. I think going back through, they were able to feed through the data and figure out, okay, this is an anomalous noise. Now we need to go investigate it.
Yeah, because according to the Wall Street Journal report, it says shortly after the submersible's disappearance Sunday, the U.S. system detected what it suspected was the sound of an implosion near the debris site discovered Thursday. I want to get to the news.
Okay, I'm actually going to stop it here for my first point because this equipment was one of the things I wanted to point out. So the Navy suspected an implosion. This happened, their suspicion came within the first 2 hours because of the equipment. What he is calling the equipment, and when he's saying it's from, is not true. And I'll give you 2 points of evidence for this, which I will not dive into too deeply because of the fact that I don't want to say something that might get me in trouble. But at the same time, one, if it is a top secret system, he doesn't know the name of it. He just simply doesn't, because they're not going to tell you the name of it. It's top secret. They're not going to tell you its name. They might have a name that they have that they'll give you for it, but they're not going to tell you what it is. 2, the equipment that heard the knocking was older secret classified equipment, not top secret, but it's just knocking, and knocking is normal. You hear knocking in the ocean all the time, and they have to distinguish what's different. So the knocking was one thing. The implosion is another. They heard the implosion, but they heard it on a top secret network. That means that what they heard is now classified as top secret, and they have to go through the process of declassification in order to disclose it. So they can't just write out the gate, here you go. They have to verify what it is. They have to do their best to triangulate the position from where it's at, and then go through, and they have to do that first so that they can build a case for the declassification as fast as possible in order to aid in a rescue or a search operation. So it's not something they're able to just, oh yeah, here you go. They can't talk about it. All right? It's top secret. And they have to go through, verify, and then go, okay, look, we need to let these people know what we found, and they go through the process, and it's part of a process. It's going to take time. So there's that. 2, it's not a Cold War piece of equipment that heard this. It might have been initially established during the Cold War, but it is not something that's just going to have been there from the Cold War, and it is Cold War equipment. Why would we be searching for modern submarines with Cold War equipment? As you see, what you have to understand is the entire point of submarine warfare is stealth warfare. It's like having stealth aircraft. Now, when people go, ooh, but the SU whatever is going to be like 35 is stealth too, and so is this and that, and they had the thing is, it's not better stealth than what we have. And that's why this submarine system is important. Think about it this way with the aircraft. If we're creating aircraft that are stealth, do you think that we don't figure out a way to detect our stealth equipment when nobody has better stealth equipment than us to the best of our knowledge? Absolutely not. We make sure that our radar systems can now figure out a way to find it. Or we can try to figure out a way around radar to find it. That way we aren't outdone by our own technology and left defenseless. So look at it from a submersible situation, a submarine situation. Do you think that we are searching for submarines from the Cold War using Cold War technology while upgrading our submarines and their ability to be stealthy in the ocean, and we haven't updated those systems? No. He's making it sound, the way that he framed it, like this is some strange, really old system that's incredibly outdated, but it's top secret and he knows all about it. No. Just simply put, no. And even if he does know about it, he's not telling you about it. There's certain things about classified things that you can talk about, and there's certain things you can't. He's going to tell you what he can tell you to the best of his knowledge, or just what he's assuming, and he's going to go run with it. Because there's not more he can do without being arrested. So, with felony charges, mind you. So you, like, when people are talking about something like, oh, this is classified, always take what they're saying with a huge grain of salt and a large pill of skepticism. It's very important.
When we woke up this morning that some debris had been found. When you heard that news, what went through your mind? To me, because we heard from Coast Guard officials, they found it about 1,600 feet from the Titanic wreck site itself. That's about 5 football fields in length. That's pretty close if you want to kind of parse through, how close that was or how not close that was. So to me, I was kind of thinking, what took them so long if it was that close to the Titanic wreck site of finding some...
Does this idiot think that you can just look at the ocean through the ocean and see clear as day like you can on Earth? Like, this dumb... Has he ever swam in water? Go jump in a lake. Go jump into a lake and try to see as far as you can. Come back in a week, do it again. Come back in a week, do it again. All at the same lake. And you're going to learn that sometimes the lake is more clear than others, but you probably aren't ever really seeing very fucking far. I've been in lakes where the regular is you can't see more than your arm in front of you. You've got about 4 or 5 feet of distance you can see in the water, and that's it. I've been in lakes where you can see fucking far. You can't see forever because you just simply can't see as far in the water as you can through the oxygen because the molecules are more dense. Therefore, you don't get as much light for your eyes in order to see as far. Ooh, did you guys hear that thunder? I felt it. That was awesome. Right.
Debris at all.
Sure. I mean, so to put this into context, 1,600 feet, twice the length of Titanic. The reason it took them this long is they had to do this search with an ROV. And basically, what you had was the visual imagery from the ROV, which is only, depending on the visibility down there, maybe a few meters. So, again, imagine, searching through several football
exactly.
fields, and the only thing you can look at is maybe a yard in...
Look at that and look at how far they can see. That's not far at all. Even when they're panning across the boat. Look at this. From here at the prow to right here, that's not a long distance, and that's it. Then you're gone, right? And this guy's like, it's only 5 football fields plus 100 yards. Yeah, it doesn't sound far on paper, but look at the visibility around the Titanic. It's easy to make comments and think, oh, well, they suck at their job if you're an idiot.
Through several football fields, and the only thing you can look at is maybe a yard in front of you and a yard to each side, and you just have to go up and down and cover that entire area. And probably once they got those ROVs on site, they went down to Titanic itself because they knew that's where Titan was going, and probably worked out a search grid to cover the area around Titanic, working their way out. And
yes, I guarantee they did it this way because that is standard search and rescue operations and procedures. Is you're going to start from the last known location. In this case, you're going to start out at the desired destination because they had roughly enough time to get to their destination before they lost communications with the surface. So you're going to start there, and then you're going to have a grid that takes you out beyond there as you work.
and that's where they found it. The bow section where they were found, it's free of debris. Most of the debris came after the vessel. So that was a pretty flat, clear area. And so any objects that were on the surface of the ocean would be found, pretty clearly once they see it. And this debris also wouldn't have a lot of that growth and marine life and sand on it that you see right there.
Yes, also, I was kind of curious as well. We know that about an hour and 45 minutes into the mission, the trip itself, that's when contact was lost. And I know it's kind of hard to predict, but it seems like the prevailing wisdom today, right now, is that is possibly the moment that the entire vessel imploded. Are you seeing that? Do you agree with that? Is there any evidence? Would there be any evidence to actually determine that?
Yeah, hour and 45 minutes is about 2 to 2.5 hours down to the bottom. And they've lost communication before. We've seen that repeatedly from stories that they've lost this. The survey of the bottom, where the wreck is going to tell us that. If the debris field is close together, that means that the implosion happened closer to the bottom. If the debris is further apart, in other words, it happened at a height above Titanic, and the Gulf Stream came into effect, and drift came in, then that debris pattern would be scattered over a much larger area. So they should be able to ascertain, based on the location of the debris, when it happened with the implosion on board.
Why are the ads so long today? I'll just go back a little bit too.
So they should be able to ascertain, based on the location of the debris, when it happened with the implosion on board.
Yeah, and I think, just kind of talking about, what these 5 on board went through during this, everyone was trying to kind of put themselves in their shoes throughout the course of this story, and then we got word that this theory might have been out there, and you and I talked about it just last night, that the structural integrity of the vessel itself could have caused an implosion because of the immense pressure put on the sub itself. And people are essentially saying that, it was pulverized, and people are asking, well, whether or not these bodies can be recovered. But that's not operative, is it? Because of the circumstances.
Yeah, you're probably not getting bodies out of an implosion. You're probably not. They now rest at the bottom of the sea in Davy Jones' locker, along with the millions of countless other people since the dawn of man that have all died and sunk to the bottom of the sea, whether they were put there, whether they drowned there, whether they were sunk there, whether it was due to warfare, misadventure, or just weather, right? So it's one of these situations where, like, it's sad, but it is what it is. Hey, Kawa, how's it going? But hopefully, people can just kind of get some peace out of this for the families, that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's very low probability of recovering a body. I mean, just that pressure depth
You're not.
about would have crushed everything at that level. I think what we're going to see happen here next is part of the recovery operation will be to bring parts of the debris up. And particularly what they're going to want to look for is that tubular shape that connected the 2 end caps where the passengers rode on board. That's really the area that's going to have the biggest question. That is that fiber alloy that's put together. They'll want to be able to examine that and see what exactly potentially happened. This goes into the jurisdiction of who's going to be doing an investigation in this. This hasn't been ironed out yet. My view is it's probably going to be a joint Coast Guard, NTSB, and Canadian investigation based on the ownership of the company and the Canadian vessels involved in here. But they're going to want to bring it up. They're probably not going to be able to bring up everything here, but they'll bring up as much as they can in order to retrace what exactly happened.
Yeah, and that goes to...
Of course, there were a lot of issues. Like, the jurisdiction of, like, investigating this is going to fall on somebody. Nobody really knows who yet. They're going to have to investigate it to figure out what happened. The question is, are they going to investigate it? Most likely they will because of the lawsuit that was raised, right? And then, yeah, Kawa, you're right. There were a lot of safety issues in the last year, but there were safety issues since 2016. And I talked about that in the first video I did on this, since 2016 there were a lot of concerns, and he was cutting a lot of corners. Like this submersible imploded because he didn't care to have people build the submarine who know how to build a submarine to go to those depths safely. And he didn't want to have, like, the billionaire who had it built piloted it, right? He's not a submarine guy, but he's going to pilot it. And he's going to pilot it with 4 tourists. They didn't have the certifications to be able to go that deep. They didn't have, like, they didn't make it in a way that it makes sense to be able to go that deep. There are several things about how they built this that are a complete problem and that spelled disaster. And I'm sure that when my first video on this, it's already up, but I'm sure when I pay attention to it a little bit more on YouTube, I'm going to see people bitching about me victim blaming because I hold victims accountable, and I don't do it because they fucked up and they're guilty of what happened. I do it so that people can see this is a red flag. This is a sign that you need to turn away and go somewhere else, because every time that you're a victim of anything, you had moments where something came across that you could have had the opportunity to leave and remove yourself and not be in that situation, and you may have just missed the sign and not seen it at all, or you may have been unprepared and just uninformed and unable to recognize it. So that's why I kind of go on about the victims, is so that other people who see it can start to recognize red flags. And maybe this time people see this video and understand that that's what I'm doing, but I doubt it. People are ridiculous. I assume you hadn't. I just don't want to harp on about something that I've already covered, and talked about. But you're absolutely right. There were a lot of issues. It goes all the way back to 2016, which is actually just terrifying. Like, he started the whole thing in 2016, collecting money from some people, and there were concerns and issues then, and it's just kind of continued on. And it's really the guy who put it together, I've got suspicions about, and I'll talk about that when we're done, and I talk about the rest of what I wanted to for this.
Where the investigation goes from here, obviously you still have so many questions like so many others. What will you be looking for, though, in the investigation itself?
The things I'm going to be looking for here is not just so much what happened down at the site, but what was OceanGate doing with this submersible in between dives? What did they do when they came back in from a dive? Are they investigating it?
Oh, I bet they did nothing.
And making sure that the hull integrity is in place, because that's going to show whether or not they were doing their due diligence to ensure that this craft was safe throughout. Again, we talked about this earlier. The reason
there's no way
they decided to do away with a class.
Once again, there's no way this guy did any of the stuff that this guy's talking about. Like, the guy who put this whole thing with OceanGate together did not invest money into doing this. I guarantee it. It's another cut corner, and the reason that I say so is because of the fact, once again, this guy made a point of saying he didn't want anybody, he wanted to have, for just simplification, he wanted to have everybody involved in putting this thing together to be part of a woke grouping. So he basically didn't want anybody with submarine experience, because where are you going to get that? Well, you're going to get it from the military, but he didn't want anybody from the military or with military experience involved in his project. So you're now eliminating everybody with submarine experience. So that's all gone. And then because he's not doing that, he also is missing out on everybody with the most experience on all of these safety precautions and checks on a submersible or a submarine whenever it comes up from a dive. Everybody with the most experience and the most knowledge of what to look for has been eliminated by his refusal to have anyone from the military involved in his project. And then he also wanted these young people who fit into demographics, and just by the fact that they're young, there's nothing wrong with that, but it just highlights, once again, inexperience. And the way that things like this get avoided is by people who have experience being part of the project. so that you don't have this happen, because they've already had to go through and learn everything that was already learned and taught because of mistakes like this happening in the past. And he didn't want that, so they had to go through and start the process like they're reinventing the wheel. It's absolutely ridiculous. You saw a little bit with James Cameron and Bob Ballard that said the sub imploded right after the lost comms. That does seem to be the case. Cameron didn't trust the materials used. He said for one-time use, maybe fine, but not. Yeah, that would make sense. And James Cameron has also been down to the Titanic, like, what, 5 or 6 times, something like that. He's been down to the Titanic numerous times. I do know that. But, I mean, this guy didn't want to listen to anybody. He called his submersible unsinkable while he was planning to go to the bottom of the ocean to go see the sunk on its first ever voyage unsinkable Titanic. It's ridiculous.
Classification society. And what a classification society would have required is periodic checks, inspections to ensure that this submersible was maintaining its integrity after not just an initial dive, but every dive it went on.
Yeah, you do the same with airplanes.
Another question, the communications internally with folks at OceanGate, both before, during, after, and throughout the course of this entire week, I think that would kind of give a huge, huge vantage point and viewpoint into what they were thinking and how they were operating and acting throughout the course of this search.
Yeah, because I do think there are decisions made in the construction of this submersible. Again, a lot of things we talked about, redundant communication systems, an emergency beacon of some kind.
Redundancies are always good.
Weight. And the only way you can lose weight on this submersible is by booting somebody off of it. And so
No, you can't. There's no way for you to lose weight off of this submersible unless you just remove somebody from being inside of it before you shut the hatch. Because the only way you could get out of the submersible was with external help. So they couldn't have just, you're going to have to get out of here and kicked somebody out of it after that point. So once you have everybody in the hatch locked, you're just you're committed.
Decisions were made. Decisions were made about what to put on the submersible, what not to put on the submersible. And the larger question now is the impact this has on the submersible industry, particularly the commercial side.
Summer Cogliano,
there's going to be more safety regulations, and there's going to be more inspections, and that's going to mean a higher expense on the commercial side of this in order to operate. That's what the impact of this is going to be, because this guy ruined it for everybody. You can no longer do this with as few strings as they had, which it's not like there weren't any strings to begin with. There were strings, obviously. It's not like some Joe Blow went out and did this. It was a billionaire, right? So there were hoops that had to be gotten through. But there's going to be more of that, and there's going to be more red tape that people have to jump through, which means more money. It's also going to mean more government investment into regulating this and enforcing those regulations, which means more tax money has to be divested to something of this as well. So that's pretty much all that means.
We really do appreciate you kind of guiding us through this story throughout the course of the week. Your expertise is really, unmatched, and we are very, very appreciative. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, right now, though, we do want to put up the statement here from OceanGate. We read this out.
Okay, good.
It came out earlier today, and I'm going to read it in full here. They say, "We now believe that our CEO, Stockton Rush, Shahzada Dawood, and his son Suleiman Dawood, Hamish Harding, and Paul-Henri Nargeolet have sadly been lost. These men were true explorers who shared a distinct spirit of adventure and a deep passion for exploring and protecting the world's oceans. Our hearts are with these 5 souls and every member of their families during this tragic time. We grieve the loss of life and joy they brought to everyone they knew. This is an extremely sad time for our dedicated employees who are exhausted and grieving deeply over this loss. The entire OceanGate family is deeply grateful for the countless men and women from multiple organizations of the international community who expedited wide-ranging resources and have worked so very hard on this mission. We appreciate their commitment to finding these 5 explorers and their days and nights of tireless work in support of our crew and their families. This is a very sad time for the entire explorer community And for each of the family members of those lost at sea, we respectfully ask that the privacy of these families be respected during this most painful time.
Now, oh, damn it, got me. It ended immediately.
Everywhere are losing their minds.
So, I just want to take us back to that shit there at the end. Because this is dumb. I wish that they didn't release any of the names. Not one. They should not have released a single name at all. Period. And here's why, right? So, if OceanGate wanted people to take them seriously, we respectfully ask that the privacy of these families be respected during this most difficult time, right? But here's everyone's name. Leave their fucking names off of it. How about that? Because as we've seen, the family of that 19-year-old who was on there has been harassed, right? I believe it's that kid's brother, or half-brother maybe, has also been being harassed. Like, it's not excusable. It's absolute dog shit that this is... Like, don't include names of people who died in your shit. Just don't do it. I hate that is the way that things operate.
If I said...
So, before we jump into this one, there's a few things I want to talk about with this submersible issue. Because, as I've said before, the powers that be want to divide everyone, and they kind of work angles in order to do so. And they do this by design. They do it on a regular basis, and the media is a tool in which they do this. And I've gone over this time and time again, but it's constantly like it's an issue of sleight of hand. They're showing you their left hand, and their right hand is over here, just doing whatever it wants, but you're occupied over here with the left hand because it keeps moving and doing these things and getting you involved in stuff, right? And invested emotionally into things. So I took notes on 3 different things that did take place in the background while this was going on, and I just kind of want to hit them a little bit so that maybe some people who aren't paying attention to the world at large outside of what the media is telling them can join in and see exactly what the hell is going on, because this is ridiculous. Now, first of all, while everybody was stuck on this entire Titan submersible issue, as sad as it is, I'm just going to throw it out there for the last time. It was a situation I saw this being the best outcome of. Because they aren't suffocating, it's not slow, it's not scary, it's a little bit of noise and you're gone. You might have had a split moment of, oh fuck, what's that? And then you were crushed. Just implosion and you're done. So it was the best case scenario aside from a miraculous survival story. So that is what it is. Meanwhile, however, the media made sure you were focused on this thing, and you were harassing billionaires and, eat the rich, and, oh, look, they're eating themselves. It's just rich people at the bottom of the sea, and all those nasty comments and discussions that have been taking place. Then you've also got the attacks on the one kid because, he still went to the concert that he bought tickets for to go see Blink-182 instead of sitting at home sad and worried out of his fucking mind because they don't know where his dad and half-brother are. But they were on this thing, right? Or he could go and try to enjoy his time rather than being obsessed with this depression and fear, which is absurd because of the fact that that's not what anybody would want you to do. If you died today, would you want to be looking at your family from the afterlife and seeing them sad and stuck in place, or would you want them to enjoy what's left of their own lives? It's the same thing. So it's ridiculous to attack these kids for. However, while everybody's doing all that stuff, nobody seems to have noticed that Department of Justice had Hunter Biden dead to rights on 3 federal felonies, 2 counts of tax fraud, and 1 illegal possession of a firearm. And these weren't even debates. These were absolutely 100%. They had his ass. and he now has no charges against him. Hunter Biden pled guilty to federal tax charges. So he pled guilty to tax fraud. 2 counts of tax fraud. Your ass would be sitting in prison right now. Not only that, but the gun fraud charge. This man was a known crack addict. Okay, he was a crackhead. And not only that, when he did this, when he was recovering, if you talk to an addict, he's still an addict. He went and purchased a firearm, which means that he lied on the document, which asks you if you are an alcoholic or an abuser of any illicit substance. And he lied and said he's not. So otherwise he would not have been able to purchase that gun. Now, not only that, but he also freaked out one day and threw this gun into a trash can within 1 city block, I believe, of a school. This is what's going on with him. Okay? Nothing. A big fat nothing burger because he's the president's son. Congratulations. Nobody heard about it. Story 2 that we'll talk about, the Durham reports. Durham went and did a testimony in Congress about Russiagate and a whole lot of other stuff with the Russia-Trump probe, as you can see here, and some other stuff. Now, what came out of this is, and we've already known this because of the investigations into Donald Trump, but what came out of this was just more evidence of the fact that, 1, there was no Trump-Russia collusion, but that there was an FBI Democratic National Convention collusion. Now, I'm not going to say Democrat because it's the overarching organization of the party that was colluding with the FBI in order to do this. And what they were doing was spying on the United States citizens and violating your rights. So there's that, as well as spying on Donald Trump while he was running for office, which fell into the exact same report, which, if you look into the bylaws of how we're supposed to have people running for office in this country, is illegal. That is illegal to be doing because it was being done in a way to prevent him from running effectively. Not to investigate an actual crime, but to stall his ability to run. So there was that going on. And this entire thing came out, and I'm just kind of scrolling slow so you guys can kind of read some of this as we're going. But the fact is, they don't want you to know any of this. Because if you realize that the FBI and the DNC have bamboozled everybody and violated your rights in the process, you're going to lose faith in the system. And the media facilitated the whole thing, right? So then you're going to not have faith in them either. See, this is a circular issue at this point because now you're pulling at the strings and the fabric of the entire reality that they have fabricated for us to live within. Now, finally, the last thing I'm going to go into is BlackRock, one of the big 3 corporations that own basically everything in the world, is now all of a sudden in agreements to be the solution to rebuilding Ukraine after the Ukraine-Russia conflict ends. Now, this might seem like, oh, good, at least they're stepping up and doing something. And as you see, once again, you've got the stories here, and I'll just kind of scroll down so you guys can read what's there. At the end of the day, what this means is BlackRock is going to be doing this. But BlackRock, how are they going to get the money for this? Well, the United States government is going to fund them in this. So it's not this big corporation. It's you and me and every other American citizen paying taxes that's going to pay to rebuild Ukraine after we've already promised them more money worth. Like, it's not strict money. It's also just the value of equipment being counted into the money that we've promised to Ukraine. But we're going to have these things also going there, right? Equipment as well as money going to Ukraine that we've already promised them, totaling in more money for Ukraine than we spent in the entire global war on terror that lasted for 20 years. So 20 years of the United States fighting a global war on terror cost us less money than what we've already promised to Ukraine for this conflict. Explain to me how this tiny little country has any reason to need that much given to it to fight Russia, because that makes zero sense to me. And then on top of that, we're now also going to be stuck footing the bill to rebuild Ukraine afterwards. This isn't even a strategically placed country or a country of like national importance or relevance to us in any way, shape, or form. This is something we should have never had any involvement in to begin with, and now we're not only going to be paying them to fight Russia, but we're going to also foot the bill on rebuilding through a company that is part of the complex of organizations that benefits off of wars to begin with by being involved in things like Lockheed and Boeing and all the big names that make all our military equipment. So now they're also going to profit not only on making equipment to sell to Ukraine through U.S. tax dollars, because we're giving them to them to fight the war, but somebody has to buy them, which just happens to be us. BlackRock is now also going to make money off of the recovery from war. So we're being fleeced twice by the same organization for the same conflict. They're getting us on both ends of this. So there's been plenty of things going on one hand, that has been being reported. Obviously, they've got these reports here, right? But they're also not reporting on it very heavily on the live news and making these big stories. Instead, they're focusing on stuff that's... People get lost at sea every day. We don't talk about them. Instead, that has been the focus for about a week. So when you see big stories that don't make sense like that, but that are meant to being told to you in a way that triggers emotional responses, just dig a little deeper. And by a little deeper, I mean read their other stories. Read the stories they're not putting on like the 5 o'clock news or whatever, and you'll start to see things that are going on that they're trying to keep kind of under the rug. And this takes place all the time. But that's how you can kind of have your eyes on what's actually going on in the world while also being led astray by the design of trying to keep you ignorant and divided.